Things have been going so well for Baylor athletics here recently that Kyron Drones leaving shocks all of us. This is Locked On Baylor.
You are Locked On Baylor, your daily podcast on the Baylor Bears, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
It's Thursday, everybody. Drake Toll alongside Director of Recruiting at Sports Illustrated, John Garcia Jr. Thank you for making Locked On Baylor your first listen every single day. The one good thing, John, that has happened in the last 3 weeks in the Baylor Athletics Department is Spotify Wrapped is out, and people are saying that Locked On Baylor is in their top 5 Spotify Wrapped. So if that is you,
there you go.
Thank you. The Apple Podcast people, it's coming. John, that's about the only good news that I have for you today. I would like to share with you, though, that Baylor is now down to one singular, not even plural, singular scholarship quarterback on its roster. And I'm not a coach, John, but I don't think that is a good thing.
No, it's not. Look, in this day and age, you expect movement. You expect the portal to be something that affects your roster, I would say, more than just annually, right? And something certainly that Baylor fans can understand now with Kyron Drones hitting the portal. But yeah, not great for the bowl game. I think that will be kind of however that works out under Dave Aranda, that will be fascinating just in terms of how you game plan with that situation. I don't have as intimate knowledge of the roster as you do. I don't know if some of the receivers or DBs played QB in high school, and where you bring in some wildcat packages with some of these talented running backs, or however you figure it out. But yeah, not an envious position to be in. But we do know come spring and especially fall, that QB room is going to look a whole lot different with a lot more arms and variety in terms of what we see now.
So, John, Austin Novosad's coming in, and you know that name as well as anybody who's come on this show. He is one of the premier quarterbacks, top 10 quarterback in the upcoming class. So, is there a realm? You know what? Before I even get into that, I want to know, do you want even that caliber of freshman stepping on the field and starting week 1 if you're Baylor or anybody?
I don't know if any coach would tell you they wanted that. If that's how it breaks, that's how it breaks. We've seen freshmen come in and do well, particularly in this day and age where they're coming from high school offenses that are more sophisticated, they're RPO driven, they're pass driven. So there is more experience and I guess trust in that true freshman quarterback maybe than ever before. But it's not something that anybody wants to deal with. So I do think that's something to keep an eye on. Obviously, Novosad at worst today is your number 2 guy as a true freshman. He's still in the playoffs, by the way, still rolling for Dripping Springs High School, which is not usually the case at that school. So that's a story in and of itself. 40 touchdowns is the total that I've seen recently to this point.
Keep going, John. Yeah, keep going. I love
it. He's still gonna be a teenager transitioning to the Big 12 and the ever-changing Big 12. So that will still be a lot for any true freshman. And typically you deal with, if you do have to go with a true freshman, you usually work him in there pretty slowly, right? You focus on other elements of the offense and allow him to kind of ease in to that process. Not something, again, that you ever want to do. But if Baylor has to resort there, it could be worse. There could be a lot of scenarios where the true freshman you're bringing in has no chance of seeing the field successfully as a first-year guy. I do think Austin Novosad has that capability to succeed as a true freshman if called upon.
John, I pride myself on not asking long, convoluted questions, but buckle up, baby.
Here we go.
Baylor right now, as it sits, will have next season 2 quarterbacks, 2 scholarship quarterbacks, 1 being Blake Shapen, if nothing changes, 2 being Austin Novosad, if nothing changes. Blake Shapen, in September of this year, threw for 773 yards, 7 touchdowns, 1 interception. John, some of us would call that good. In November, he threw for 783 yards, that's 10 more, on 27 more passes for 3 touchdowns and 5 picks. The opponents were much better, obviously, but you expect the progression from a third-year quarterback that Blake Shapen didn't give you. So your options are that or a true freshman, a damn good true freshman, but a true freshman. And really, it's a numbers game, too. This must mean Baylor goes to the portal for, at very least, a warm body.
100%. You have to do it. I do think you're in position to overhaul the roster at any position group faster than you ever have. And now you can do it with guys who don't have to sit out, who have experience in at least similar offenses, or guys who athletically profile in the direction that you want your offense to go. So I do think there's plenty of names available. Look, it's not even December 5th, and we know a lot of big name QBs are already looking forward to their
Yeah.
next step, including starters, right? You know, the Tulsa quarterback had a huge year. He's going to be in the portal. Hudson Card has started games. He's going to be in the transfer portal. Just saw Oregon's Jay Butterfield, who's more of a
Wow.
pro style guy, enter the portal. There's going to be a lot more names coming in. Cade McNamara has a ton of experience. He is expected to be in the portal. I'm hearing at least two more starting quarterbacks with production to their name are going to hit the portal that maybe folks aren't anticipating. So it's going to be wild in portal recruiting for everybody at every position. But of course, quarterback is where the needle moves a little bit quicker. So I do think the timing of Kyron Drones announcing this probably helps Baylor. It probably helps
Yeah.
them reshuffle the deck, use the back channels, and say, hey, you know, when this thing opens on December 5th, can we act quickly? Because you know there are schools coast to coast that are trying to get that quarterback domino settled ASAP. So it's just like free agency in the NFL, right? Whenever the day is 4 p.m., whatever day it happens to be, deals are announced at that moment,
Mm.
right? So it's illegal technically to communicate, but the deals are in place already. So that is where the portal situations have moved towards in college football. So now between November 30th and December 5th, use your resources and find out who is interested in playing for a pretty darn stable Big 12 program that's going to stay in the mix. So that will be the task at hand for Dave Aranda and company. Because as you said, you have to hit the portal. Luckily for Baylor, a lot of different QB styles with QB experiences all over the place are already in the proverbial portal. So it will be fun to see just who tracks that way. A lot of these kids have ties to Texas and the state of Texas. So that will factor in as well and certainly not hurt Baylor's chances. So you told me to buckle up for that question. We all need to buckle up for that portal opening on the 5th because it's going to feel like Thanos bursting through it and everything's going to feel different thereafter.
John Garcia Jr. with the pop culture reference, dropping it on us. John, that movie's got witchcraft in it. Us Baylor folks aren't allowed to watch that kind of stuff.
Understood.
The thing that a lot of people are missing, Kyron Drones is a person. The transfer portal takes humanity out of football. These are just bodies throwing and running in on a field to majority of fans and analysts. When I think, though, about how Kyron Drones is walking, breathing, eating breakfast right now as we speak, it reminds me that he's got a lot in front of him. And he's the guy that I learned to love a lot while he was at Baylor, just for the way that he played. So, talking about a guy, personality, what's the best case scenario? Because when you've got that kind of quarterback competition in this portal, you saw Gary Bohannon had to drop down to a mid-major at USF. If you're Kyron Drones and have 300 yards and 3 touchdowns to your name, what can be next for that guy?
It's gonna, unfortunately for him, it's gonna depend on the top of the board, right? We mentioned multiple starting quarterbacks already in the portal. There's gonna be another wave come, you know, the next few days
Yeah.
that hit that portal, and it's gonna revert. Unfortunately for a lot of these guys, it's gonna revert back to how it felt in high school. You are as good as the market says you are, and those dominoes are expected to drop first, with few exceptions, right? Outside of Caleb Williams last year, all the big QB portal dominoes fell kind of in the order of importance, if you will. So for Kyron, that's going to be the factor again. You know, a little bit of waiting could be mixed in. But again, self awareness is a part of all of this, right? So if you're watching how it unfolded with Bohannon and understand that, hey, maybe dropping down is smart and you can get ahead of the curve with those groups of programs, you might be able to claim a spot sooner than you would have otherwise, because we've all heard of the portal purgatory and kids
Yes.
not leaving the portal. I saw a number before we jumped on, Drake. It's almost 300 players from the FBS that have hit the portal, and that number doubles.
Already.
It doubles
Already.
when you go down a level, right? So you're talking well over 1,000 FBS and FCS kids. hitting the portal or about to hit the portal. So this thing at that position in particular is a true numbers game, and it's cutthroat. It is absolutely cutthroat after that top layer. So self-awareness and self-scouting is a big part of that. So you would hope that Drones and his camp understand that, and they're using their own back channels to figure out what the market looks like ahead of time, ahead of announcing for the portal. So to the point where when you do announce, as you did today, now okay, I'm announcing it officially, and in these days, these schools are going to contact me, and then I want to have a decision by now. You hope that's the plan, but you just know, unfortunately, for a lot of these kids, it isn't. It's just hey, let's move on and see what's out there and adjust accordingly. Those are the cases that often don't work out in the portal again, especially at the quarterback position where the numbers are so limited relative to just about every other position.
John, we've got a couple minutes for John's thoughts here. By couple, I mean pretty much the rest of the show. What I wanted to do originally before this even happened was just ask you about the transfer portal, what it's become, and what that means for you and SI, and really Baylor's quarterback situation. But first, I'll tell the folks at home about BetOnline. So right now, BetOnline, where the game starts, is a money maker. When I tell you, I dropped the bag, as the kids are saying, on Team USA on Team USA to beat, who do they play? Iran. Dude, so good. I also parlayed Baylor and USA money line. $17.76, 1776 to win $28. It did not hit because Baylor got beat by 30 by Marquette. But the US one did. The individual US one. Hey, I went in the other day. I put Furman money line, Maryland money line, Illinois money line, Miami, Ohio money line. If you're not a bettor, that means nothing to you. But to me, it means free money at betonline.net. If you like free money and want to do that as well, responsibly, go to betonline.net, your place for wagering, podcasts, sports news, too. If you name it, sports-wise, they probably have it at betonline.net. Go check it out, mobile interface or on your laptop or however you do it. Rub two coconuts together and search BetOnline today. It's where the game starts. You can't start the game until you go to betonline. John, happy free agency. It is. What does the whiteboard say today?
Team chaos.
Team
obviously.
chaos. Yeah.
Because that's what December is going to be for everyone dealing with recruiting, portal, NIL, roster management in college football. So we root as journalists for the storylines themselves, because trying to do this thing narrow like you are trying to do it under that Baylor umbrella, God bless you, because it is chaos. There's really no other way to put it. So for me, I'm just embracing it. I've just bought in, and I'm like, hey, I'm just rooting for Team Chaos at this point. It usually stems on the field where I'm rooting for upsets and just, the great storylines in that regard. But now, of course, it's translated over to recruiting in the portal itself, where hey, last year showed us this thing is crazy. We're going to see all conference, all American players move on from their posts to other schools just because they can. So it is going to be fascinating, as it always is.
John, 10 years ago, was it like, oh, December's here, time to go on vacation? Let's, rest a little bit. Signing day's over and we're done. Now it feels like just a flood of, like, your job just has to have changed so much in the last decade. This has to be insane.
Insane's a good word for it. Yeah, we've all had to adjust, right? College coaches tell us all the time, it is roster management is a problem. there's no quick fix to it. But at the same time, you have to assimilate to the new rules. And the portal a few years ago threw that on its head. Now NIL's there on top of the portal. So it's on its head twice, right? So it is totally uprooted compared to where it was even 5 years ago, I would say, where the kids were transferring slowly, and it was mostly grad transfers or the conventional transfer. I'm homesick. I'm not playing, whatever it may be. Now there's no logic going into these transfers. It could be simply money. It could be simply opportunity. It could be simply, hey, I just don't like my position coach, so I'm going to move on. There is no wrong answer as to why a player will hit the transfer portal. So yeah, trying to predict and project any of that is team chaos in and of itself. But it's been fun. I won't lie and say it hasn't been entertaining and surprising, which college football has always taught us on the field, but now it's everywhere surrounding the sport, where you should expect the unexpected, like a team like TCU going undefeated under a first-year head coach.
Of course, TCU, who we all love and favor. John, I don't want to project this on Kyron Drones because I don't believe it's a situation at all, but I'd like to know if it's going on in college football. I've heard murmurs of it at least. And I want to know your perspective. So, say just he's squarely an example here. A guy like Kyron Drones wants to transfer, and a team like Texas is interested. It's completely hypothetical. They call his off the field quarterback coach who does his offseason training and Texas says, "Hey, we'd love to have this kid." And his training coach goes to him and says, "Hey, offseason, enter the transfer portal." Is that happening across the country right now? Is that a catalyst to why you're seeing so many new bodies in this portal?
It's been happening since last offseason, right? The moment these position battles are laid out, the moment the on-field product creates the change it does, coaching carousel and all of that, those calls are being made. There's no rules against off-field A connecting with off-field B engaging interest. So again, you hope that you work the gray areas the right way on both ends of this thing, both program and more importantly, player, right? As you
Yeah,
mentioned,
yeah.
these are human beings that, some of them are making awful decisions to hit the portal. Some of them are going to fall forward on this thing. So you hope that that homework and those gray areas are vetted and explored before the fact. Unfortunately, while it is happening at a very high rate, there's the other end of it where it's absent and it's going to cost kids scholarships, education, in addition to the ability to play ball at the level they were at. A lot of players are going to have to move in the opposite direction that they assume when they do enter the portal. But yeah, the back channels, all that stuff is absolutely happening. Some of the portal entries we've seen, I started hearing about in September and October. So that group will collectively make their move, and a lot of those those destinations are predetermined
Yeah.
when that portal announcement is made. There are others that are more wide open and conventional. Hey, I'm in the portal now, let's see what happens. And that's the group that's taking the true risk here, because everywhere the spots are limited, yet there's more talent available than ever before. So finding out where you fit in is quite difficult, and a lot of these kids unfortunately will find out the hard way.
John, there is some semblance of damage control at Baylor, and that's why I can only hope that legally there is a quarterback somewhere thinking, "Yeah, I'd like to go there." And a big part of that is that Baylor selected Blake Shapen
Yes.
and effectively said, "Gary, you're good. You can go." And that is making a statement. This player fits our style more. We can win with him more because winning is the apex. If Blake Shapen is a 6-6 quarterback, granted all the issues weren't on him, but Baylor had the fewest touchdown passes in the Big 12. And that Gary Bohannon would have been a 5-7 quarterback is kind of the statement you're making. That's just that optically is bad. If you're Baylor, how do you now sell that to someone in the transfer portal so that you don't have a QB battle between a struggling redshirt sophomore and a true freshman?
I think you have to sell a skill set. I think it may be, if you're Dave Aranda, you say, "Hey, did we make a mistake in this conversation?" Which I'm sure is a popular conversation topic for your audience. Do you now say, "Let's target that dual threat. Let's target that guy who can kind of put us on his back athletically if it's not working out schematically"? Does that now become the reason why you go after this style
Yeah.
of quarterback prospect? It's certainly possible. But selling it, I think, will still be, I don't want to say easy, nothing is easy, but it will still be very comfortable for Baylor, because you are going to sell, hey, come in and compete right now with a guy who we thought was the guy, but it might not be the case. So you're selling everyone else on this roster, the stability of what Baylor looks like moving towards the new look Big 12. And you highlight that, hey, this was a play away or a person away from feeling a whole lot more like 2021. So in that regard, I think you do have a product to sell to a player who's looking for that opportunity. If you're, again, this is not speculation with these players in particular, but guys who lost out on starting gigs, just like Bohannon, Cade McNamara, Hudson Card, that group of quarterback, Jay Butterfield, as we just mentioned, you want that opportunity and you feel like it's not the same opportunity at the school that you're leaving. So you just want that chance. While there are promises being made to certain quarterbacks and certain position players, hey, come here and you'll start day one. Those are easy to sell, but others are okay with being presented just the opportunity
Yeah.
to be QB1, even if it's not going to be handed over.
John, I wanted to I'll put it like this. I had every plan to ask you about why would these big quarterbacks come to Baylor, quote, Baylor, little school Baylor. And then I started to realize Adrian Martinez at Kansas State, JT Daniels at West Virginia, even a couple years ago in Chandler Morris, where he was such a big recruit, him going to TCU. It feels like there's no rhyme or reason to why a lot of these quarterbacks go to the certain schools they do, aside from your Dylan Gabriels, who's going to pick one of the Power 5 blue blood schools. For Baylor, though, who should fans realistically circle? Who are these quarterback names you're already seeing early that could be within striking distance of Baylor? Because it seems like McNamara is a kid that belongs at a, Oklahoma-style university, maybe not so much a Baylor.
Yeah, I do think there's some self-scouting Baylor fans need to do as well. That's a very good point. I think, look, McNamara and Card are probably off the table. I don't know. First of all, I don't know if Hudson Card wants to play in the
Hudson
Big
Card at
12.
Baylor University, college
Yeah,
football just explodes.
right. Look, stranger things have happened.
Sure.
We've seen last year Zach Calzada beat Auburn at Texas A&M and then go to Auburn.
Yeah.
Crazier things have happened, and then he lost. Then he never contended for the job, by the way. On top of it, so stranger things have happened. But yeah, I think that crop is probably beyond Baylor at this point. But again, does Baylor target those guys? Again, Hudson Card's a good athlete. McNamara is more stationary. Is that even the goal, right?
Yeah.
Again, athletically, what does Baylor want to find in this next quarterback? Is it someone who's going to go fit the system, or is he a dynamic enough player where you bend your system for that quarterback? Should he win the job? It kind of makes me think of Cam Ward, who was at Incarnate Word last year, transfers over to Washington State, where it wasn't perfect, but that offense looked and felt a lot different with
Yep.
him at the helm because they could utilize his legs, and it wasn't going to be throw the ball 55 times and see where you end up there. So I do think that there's possibilities for Baylor to push athletically at that position. And I think historically, look, when we think of the best Baylor teams, at least when I think of the best Baylor teams that I've ever seen, there is a little bit of continuity at the quarterback position relative to playmaking ability and athleticism that I think is worth exploring. If you're already behind the theoretical 8 ball in talent acquisition, right? You don't have the flashy NIL or a billion first round draft picks to sell to your receivers and your running backs and your offensive tackles and tight ends. And unfortunately, Baylor's in that group. If you don't have that to sell, how do you change things? It could take one player who you have to buy into and believe in a little bit more than maybe he's experienced to this point. So I do think that if I'm Baylor, I'm pushing more for a true dual threat with maybe multiple years of experience of eligibility remaining, so
Yeah.
that independent of Blake Shapen, depending on how that battle shakes out, you've got an opportunity to have two really interesting and different scholarship quarterbacks on board beyond him going forward. So that would kind of be my plan. So I think that's probably the ballpark. Butterfield is interesting. He's one that just came out of Oregon. He's one that hit the portal as soon as we came on, that now I'm like, it could be interesting. He can move a
Yeah.
little bit. So, you think of players like that who really never got that true opportunity in loaded QB rooms, and it works out. I think, like, look at Robbie Ashford at Auburn, to bring it to Oregon and Auburn one more time. Third or fourth string up at Oregon, goes to
Yeah.
Auburn, struggling team. They make a change and go with the dual threat, and they end up rushing for like 250 yards at several games in a row. And Auburn felt a lot different at the end of the year after their coaching change, and he was a big part of that. Not saying it's that drastic at Baylor, but that opportunity just creates a bit of a higher floor, because the margin for error grows when you've got
Yeah.
a player who can do it on his own, for lack of a better term, athletically at the position. And look, the game is still moving towards that more than it isn't.
Sometimes, and I love that you mentioned a team can be one player away. TCU did not pull a Texas Tech in recruiting and transfer portal like Joey McGuire did. McGuire changed the face of the program. Sonny Dykes came in, brought in his 5-7 guys from the portal, and is now possibly going to a college football playoff. So for Baylor, they could be a quarterback away. But John, before we get you out of here, a couple minutes left. I want to do like the lightning round of John's thoughts on now the
Okay.
coaching carousel that is also added on to the transfer portal out there. Just like 30-second blurbs on a couple of these guys. Deion Sanders, what do you see? What do you think?
It doesn't look like he's going to take the Colorado job, and I don't know if I blame him for that. I think he's got an opportunity maybe elsewhere, or do you stick around and wait for the next round of firings? Because look, these leashes are shorter than they've ever been.
Yep.
Dion understands that, and simultaneously, he's got a great product at where he's at right now. Obviously, Georgia Tech just named Brent Key their permanent head coach, so that one is out the door, and he, for better or worse, wasn't as involved with Auburn as maybe we thought he
Hmm.
should be. So I think there's a little bit of leverage for Dion to stay put. Colorado is just it's hard. That's a hard job, even for the Deion Sanders of the world.
Matt Rule to Nebraska, notable good guy who, after he left Baylor, some skeletons were revealed from the closet, who said his dream was to be in the NFL and has now walked that back. Rule to
Yes.
Nebraska.
Yes, now it's about development in young men.
Yes.
Look, I think it's a good fit on both fronts, though the administration there is not in it for the long haul. If you pulled the rug out of your native son in Scott Frost that quickly, I don't know how much confidence Rule can have to do what he did at Baylor and have time to build the thing.
Which, John, he said he was promised 4 or 5 years in Carolina. You're not getting 4 or 5 years in Lincoln, man. So I don't know what
Right.
you're ready for here.
Right. So, can he learn from those assumptions, we can call it, and say, "Hey, let me embrace this transfer portal and let me
Yeah.
like as I come back to college, let me use some of that NFL experience and leverage to say, "Hey, I know what it takes, blah blah blah. Let's turn this thing around right now." Maybe. Maybe he's got to evolve to that degree because the old school, we're going to win with work and culture and time. It just you're not afforded that opportunity anymore. So in that aspect, I would have loved Matt Rule at Nebraska. Give him 7 years to bring that thing back. You just don't have that time
Mm.
anymore. So I wish him luck. I think he'll embrace some newer concepts than he did at Baylor, but Nebraska, that N doesn't mean what it did when he was in college and when he was kind of coming up in the sport. And that still matters more than anything else when it comes to recruiting and your ceiling for talent acquisition.
All right, last two to drop in here. Hugh Freeze at Auburn is just a firestorm. And I think that Josh Pate makes a great point, which also Auburn hiring former Arkansas State coaches, the trend continues.
Yes.
And Pate said the other day that the second Hugh Freeze wins 10 games, all these allegations, all of this storm goes away. And that feels like the nature of college athletics. Your thoughts on Hugh Freeze being at Auburn? Because I know I don't like it.
Right. It would be viewed as, hey, everyone deserves a second chance. And look
Yep.
how successful and how much you can change when you are given that chance. Look, let's just say what it is. This is about winning and recruiting. It's not about anything else. It's not about the development of young human beings. It's not about the right human fit, any of those things. It's about, hey, we rolled the dice on a West Coast guy who was known for his schematics and his
Yeah.
scheme, right? And Brian Harson. It didn't work. So what do? We double back down to what we always used to do. Offensive guy, deep South ties, win, lose, or draw, and he's beat Saban twice.
Yep.
That's it. Sometimes it is that simple. So offensively, and the ceiling is going to be much higher at Auburn, but at what cost? And it's the era of NIL. So when you do it illegally or on the fringe of legality, it's one thing. Now, how aligned is that administration, new AD, and new
Yeah.
collective? Everything's new at Auburn. How aligned can you possibly be with all these new entities at the very same time? That is where I have the biggest question marks surrounding Hugh Freeze and Auburn and how he builds that staff out. All we know is Cadillac Williams at this point. That's going to be a big test for Hugh because he's been able to get away with bringing his guys and or developmental young recruiters at different spots. You can't do that at Auburn because the last guy just tried that, right? So you've got to bring in names, and I don't know who's going to put their resume under his in this day and age where while winning is still the most important thing, real easy to get canceled and go on the other side of the PC police at the same time. So who's willing to do that will be fascinating to see in the next couple of weeks and months.
Yeah, if I travel with him as his OC and he gets canned in 2 years, I'm probably not getting a good job here anytime soon.
Right.
John, also, he's the taste in the mouth of losing by 45 to New Mexico State at home and then going to a Power 5 job. Last one, super, super quick. Texas A&M, Jimbo Fisher. Is there any way, even with that last win, that Fisher can salvage what's happened?
I'm not sure. He's used the OC as a scapegoat here, so Dickey is out at A&M. But we all know, look, Jimbo is known for not relinquishing control of his offense in particular. So how will that perception shift? It's going to have to be something we don't foresee at the moment. Some other entity. Maybe it's Weigman's development individually, and he becomes tied to Jimbo, and Jimbo now is again viewed as this QB guru that we mistakenly viewed him as for a decade.
Yeah.
Maybe it's that. Maybe it's that simple. But again, how much time is he going to have for that? Because there were a lot of different points this year where you're like, A&M can afford that big old buyout. So how much time is he afforded to rebrand his own thing, which is supposed to be quarterback development? So if you tie that into a teenager and Connor Weigman, very talented, SI99, all that stuff 2 years ago, good luck to you because there are a lot more holes on that roster as well. And now, by the way, you've got to bring in another offensive coordinator to rein in on top of it. So I'm not sure beyond 2023 how this thing looks in College Station. And look, recruiting has shown us that. They've got like 12 verbal commitments.
Yeah.
Don't have a quarterback verbally committed right now. It is borderline shocking what has gone down in College Station since the apex of the number one recruiting class in December and February.
And 200 miles away, Sonny Dykes is going to the college football playoff in year number 1. So that doesn't help. John, thanks so much as always for coming on. I know I ran you over time here today too. If people want to find you out there, hopefully we can get you 1,000 followers because of this. Where can they get you?
Yeah, well, follow me on Twitter, John Garcia_JR. We're talking ball at every level, pretty much every day. So come hang out.
Come back tomorrow on Locked On Baylor as we break down Baylor men's basketball, which also doesn't look very good right now, and their matchup with Gonzaga tomorrow on Locked On. Thank you for making it your first listen every single day. Baylor.